Hello, welcome to today's training. In this training, we're going to look at the if function. My name is Dan Caro. Now, what does the if function do? The if function is actually a logic statement that reviews your particular statement or logic and returns true if your statement is correct or false if your statement is wrong. Now, the logic syntax is very easy and I want to make it very simple here. Saying equal to if you open your bracket, then you type in your logic statement. And like I said, the logic statement is the statement you're making. So you can actually say, if Paul is taller than John, that is your statement. So saying, if that statement is true or correct, Excel will return true. If that statement is wrong, Excel will return false. So you make a statement, value if true, value if false. Now the if statement is one of the most popular functions in Microsoft Excel, and you've got to know it in there because you will need it across various functions and various job requirements. Now, the beauty of this statement is that the true that it will return, you can actually bring up another argument or another item to say replace it with true. So instead of telling me true, you can tell me correct, you can tell me fine. So let me just make a simple analysis of Python. I type 500 here, and here I'm typing 7. Now, I want to make a simple statement saying this value is equal to this value. Now, I've made a statement saying that these two numbers are equal. We are saying that for the if statement, if it is correct, it will tell you true. If it is wrong, it will tell you false. Now, we know this is not correct. So if I hit my enter, it's telling me false. Now, this is the very elementary illustration of the if statement. Now, you make a statement and it tells you true if your statement is correct. If I take this way, it's telling me true, meaning that this statement is true. Now, we did mention earlier that the beauty of this statement is that you can convert this true to whatever you want. So I can actually say, instead of true, tell me fine. Instead of true, tell me correct. So I make a statement, and if it's true, I also determine the type of result that I want. So let's come to this place. Now we have terms, scores of students, and then we have their average score. Now, the remark I'm going to have here is that if a particular student has scores below 50, that person will fail. Otherwise, that person will fail. So we've just made a statement that, okay, less than 50. Okay, let me just use the less than sign. Less than 50, we say that person has failed. Greater than 50, or okay, let's say greater than or equal to 50, that person passed. So this is my guide. So I'm going to look at this remark and say if average score is less than 50, the person has failed. And all I'm doing is following this logic syntax, which is very easy. If I make a logic statement, so I come here and say if, now it's asking me for logic statement. What's my statement? This value here, I'll say less than 50. Now, it's not because it's 45, it could have been 90. I'm just making a statement that whatever value is here is less than 50. That ends the first argument. This is a 3-argument function. I take a comma. Now it's asking me value if true. If this statement is true, that is less than 50, I want it to be fail. Now, since fail is not a number, I'll put in parentheses. I'll open this and say fail. And I take a comma. It gives me the third argument, which is value if false. If it is false that the person did not fail, then the person has passed. So I'm going to take pass in parentheses. This is all I need, and I hit my. So it's telling me this person failed. Of course, he did because he's got less than 50. Now, if for any reason this person scores 67, for example, he will pass. But now he has 45, he has failed. So I'm going to copy down here, and then my job is done. So for every person that scored 50 and above, you can see 83 passed, 33 failed, 69 passed, and then you just move on. Now, the next thing we're going to do is that we're going to go beyond the simple if statement to a more complex one. Now, the if statement can actually test various conditions. Now, I have just tested 2 conditions, that is fail or pass. Now, where there are only 2 conditions, it's called the simple if statement. But where the conditions to be tested are numerous, we're going to use what called nested or indented if statement. Now, the if statement can nest up to 32 different conditions. That makes it a very robust function in Microsoft Excel. So it's not just going to be about pass and fail, tall and short, black or white. A lot of conditions can be tested. Let's look at this grading, for example. Now we're told that 0 to 50, you get grade F. 51 to 60, grade D. 61 to 70, C, down to those above 80 having A. Okay. So if I come here now, I can easily say that this person scored F. 71 will be what grade now? 71 will be B. So rather than manually check them one after the other, I'm going to use the if function, which is the same logic. Now that I have more than one argument, I'm going to start with any of them. I can start with the top one, I can start with the bottom one. But let's start with the top one. The top one are those who scored F. And those are candidates that scored 0 to 50, which is technically less than 51. So my argument will be this value is less than 51. And if it is less than 51, value if false. What will be the value? It's going to be F. So this is what you will score if your grade is less than 51. The next thing is value if false. Remember, we did value if false to be passed because that was the only alternative remaining. But here, if it's not F, you can't determine a value if false because there are other arguments or grades remaining. So you cannot say because the guy did not get F, he got this. You need to also look at the scores. So we're going to look at the second argument by typing another if. Now I've typed two if, that means I have nested. Now my second argument is the value is less than 61. Now what that means is the guy did not score F, but he scored less than 61. If that is the case, what will be his grade? His grade will be D. Then I take a comma. Value if false. I cannot determine because there are three other grades. So what do? I take another if. I move here. This time, there are guys that got below 71. And if they got below 71, their score will be C. And then I'm going to take the next one because there are still two other grades. If this time less than 81, yeah, less than 81, and then their score will be B, I think so, yeah. Now, let's look at the last one. The guy did not score F, he didn't score D, he didn't score C, he didn't score B, and it's asking value if false. If it is false that he didn't score any of these ones, automatically that person scored A. That's why the if function, please, as a requirement, must always end with value if false. So the value if all these ones are false is that the person has. Now, when you nest normally in basic arithmetic, you write bracket, open, you are supposed to close your argument with the number of nesting you've done. I think here we've done about 4 or 5 nesting. So I'm supposed to close with that number. But please, when you're working with Excel, don't bother. If that's your only error, Microsoft Excel will close it for you and ask you to accept the correction. I hit my look at yesterday. That we found a typo in your formula and try to correct it. So you notice that it has put all the relevant closing brackets, about 4 of them, which I didn't include. So all you need is just to accept. Say, do you want to accept this correction? Just take yes. And it's telling you this guy got F. What do? You come here, you filter down. So you've actually graded. Now, Microsoft introduced another function much later called the ifs. So if you're using a lower version below 2016, you will not get the ifs function, or 2016 and below, you won't get the ifs function. Now, what does the ifs do? It stops you from nesting. Remember, we said you did if, that is nesting. All you need to do is just to write one ifs and you display your argument. Now, those arguments, you display them up to your last condition because the ifs one, you will not write ifs twice, you write it once. Secondly, the ifs does not have a value if false. Remember, I did mention earlier that the if function must end with value if false, but the ifs does not have a value if false, which means you define your parameters to the last item. So I take ifs. Now, when I open a bracket, it's going to ask me logic test 1. Now, that's because if you type ifs, the system will know you have more than one argument to supply or one logic to supply. You have more than one argument to supply. So if you did only if, it's going to ask you logic test, which means you have only one argument. But when you took ifs, it's asking you logic test one. So I'm going to say the first logic is this one is less than 51. Now, when I take comma, it will ask me value if true. Now it's asking you value if true one, which means if this your first argument is true, what value should I need? If that is true, F. When I take a comma, if statement would normally have given me value if false. But I mentioned here that ifs do not have a value if false. So I'm going to take the second logic. Second logic is this one less than 61. Value, if that second argument is true, will be D. When I take a comma, it's going to ask me logic test 3. So you see, there is no value if false. I click on that. I define the next one, less than 71. Value, if it is true, is C. Next argument, this one, less than 81. Or you can say less than or equal to 80. Let me just less than or equal to 80. It's the same thing. But since I've continued less than 81, it's different. Value, if that's true, is B. Now, when you take your comma, for the if, we ended with value if false. But remember, the if does not have value if false. So it's asking you to define the next parameter. So the next parameter is going to be where this one is greater than 80. That way. Or you can say less than or equal to 100. So the argument depends on your reasoning. So if that is true, that test is going to get A. Now, you have not nested, so this is one argument. That means if I hit my enter key, it's not going to show me we found a typo in your argument. It's going to just give me the answer. So I hit here, it gets me that that's F. So I can just move down and then I'm done. So whether you use the if statement or use the is a choice. You can do any one you want. You'll get the same answer. If or if, you get the same answer. Now let's move to the next sheet. Now, we have a simple illustration here. Let me just read this. So at the end of every school term, students who scored between A1 and D5 in further maths are given prizes at the school end of term event. You've been given the list of all students who met this requirement, and they are instructed to what? Indicate the amount won by each student given the prize schedule table. Now look at the prize schedule. Let me use this one. We have the price schedule table here. That anybody scored A1 is going to win 100,000. That is 100,000 naira. A2, 70,000. B3, 45,000. B4, 30,000. D5, 10,000. So all I'm going to do is, since I have their grades, my own is just to insert the prizes they have won here. And I submit my report. Now, I'm going to do that using 3 approaches, if and ifs. Now, I will also use the choose function, since choose can actually do some things that the if statement can do. I'll also do, although this training is actually addressing the if function, but I will look at the ifs. So we know how the if work. I'm going to say if this value is equal to, I can actually type A1. I can do this and type A1. Can do this. If it's equal to A1, then give me this value. But since I have A1 here, I can decide to just click on this A1 and lock it up. So the choice is yours. I can decide to say, okay, this A1. And I'm locking it up because I intend to copy that formula down. So I'm saying if that is equal to A1, comma, value if true would be 100,000. I click this 100,000. I'm also locking that up because I don't want those values to change when I copy down. Now I take a comma. It's asking value if false. Of course, we know we need another statement. If this value is equal to A2, which is this A2, we are saying the price will be 70,000. Now, the reason I'm locking that up is so that when I copy down, only my relative cell here should move. This other aspect should be fixed. Now, value if false, another if this value is equal to B3, value if it is true will be 45,000. If again, I can't do a value if false yet because I still have other option. This one is equal to B4. I lock that up. Value if true will be 30. Now, value if false. We have done A1, A2, B3, B4. The only option remaining is D5, which is 10,000. So if the person does not win any of these prizes, the only prize remaining is 10,000, which is this one. So that is the value if false. Remember I said the if function must end with value if false. So I hit my, of course we know what this is. We found a type 1, it's gone again. So it's telling me this guy won 30,000. So let's look at B4. B4 here, we give for 30,000, which is correct. So all I need to do is to come here and just copy down, double tap here, and my job is done. So you can easily cross-check B3 45, somebody got A1 is 100,000, D5 10,000, and your report is done. Now let's use ifs to achieve this same report. I'm going to say equal to ifs, this equal to this, comma, 100,000. Now, I'm not going to do another if. I just continue with my logic. This equal to this, 100,000, that's 70,000. And then I continue again. No, you see, I'm not writing the if again because I've written one ifs. 45. I take the next argument. This one equal to B4. I lock up that place. What will be this price? 30,000. Now, one is remaining. But since there is no value if false, I will have to define it because the ifs does not have a value if false. We already know that. So I'll take this and my job is done. I hit my enter. I think I've made a mistake. That's now it's telling me K8. Where's that? This is supposed to be 8. I don't think so. Okay, I think there's an error somewhere. Let me try to see what's happening. The last one, this one, is equal to this one, comma, this one. Okay, let me see. Oh, fantastic. Right. So I've got it. I just come here and then I copy down. And you see that whether you use if or ifs, you are getting the same amount. Now I'm having some NA here, meaning that something is wrong with my this equals to this equal to this equal to this equal to this equal. Oh, this one is not locked up. You can see how little error like that cause a problem. Now, fine. So we already have that. Now, I've used ifs here and I have used if, and I'm getting the same thing. Now, Microsoft has a function called choose. What choose does is that it works with a number, which means choose cannot work with before. Before is not number, it's an alphanumeric data. So what I will do is I'll just pick this 4 here, knowing that in this grade, 4 is appearing in only one place. So if I pick 4, it's going to as B4. And how can I isolate B4 from 4 from that place? If I want to pick only 4, I can use a function. If I say right and I pick this, it will give me 4. You can say it's just picking only the numbers from them. I've used the right function. So I'm going to say that is what it should choose and then match it with the other ones. So I take choose, and what am I going to choose? The number from the right here to choose this. So I'm saying if you choose that value, it's asking me what value should it bring if it is 1, but that first value is 1. I'm just saying it should be 100. If it is 2, it should be 70. If it is 3, it should be 45. If it is 2, it should be 30. And if it is 1, it should be 10. Very simple. And I can see I'm getting the same thing using the choose. I copy down and my job is correct. So whether I use choose and I'm having this formula, or I use ifs and I'm getting this formula, or I use if and I'm getting this formula, I will still get the same result. So the choice is yours. When you have data, you need to analyze them, whether you're going to use if, you're going to use ifs, or you're going to use choose. The choice is yours. Now let's look at one more thing. Now you can use if across different sheets. So let's look at our salespeople. There are how many of them? There are 80 of them. Now these 80 have submitted their week 1 report, and then they submitted their week 2 report. The same staff, different week. So what are we going to do? I'm creating another place here called the score. Let me take this one off. Let me always like using the remark. Okay, so we are preparing a summary sheet saying that if the performance in week 2 is better than performance in week 1, let's recommend that person for promotion. So I'm going to say promote as a remark. But if the person did worse in week 2 than week 1, that means the person has not improved at all. So we are going to recommend that the person should get some level of reprimand or query. So follow the same logic. We're saying if. Now I go to week 2 and I pick the first staff Ekene, and I'm saying that if this score here is greater than his score in week 2, is the score in week 2. That is my argument. I take a comma, it's asking me value if true. If it is true, what happened? That means that person, I'm saying, promote that staff. Now, when I take a comma, it's asking what if it is not true? If it is not true, that means he did less. And in which case, we are saying that person should be queried, should be given a query. That's how I hit my enter key, and it's saying this staff should be queried. Why? Let's say week 2, he did 669 million. Week 1, he did 1.2 billion. So he actually dropped, and so his remark is fine. I come here and I just copy it down. Now you see every staff that is written promote or improve, that it might be, has performance higher in the new week than the previous week. Now this is how to use the if function. You can use if function between sheets, across sheets, and within the same sheet. We're going to see much more of what Excel can do in our next videos. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.